This video may well actually be the most dressed I've ever been on the channel. I have a hood. I have a hood. And also, this might actually be the first time I've ever recorded a video where I, like, am covered below the knee. This started at, like, you know, the beginning of spring this year. So, like, I was already in shorts. I'm a shorts from March to November kind of person, you know? Oh, I look so cozy with my little cup of tea and my hood. Wearing real clothes like a real person. I cut my finger today in the garden with a Stanley knife and, like, it bled a lot, but now it's, like, already stopped. So I don't know whether it was, like, bad or whether it was just sharp. I don't know. It's healed already. Maybe I'm Wolverine. Okay, so in case you didn't know already, through the second lockdown in England due to coronavirus, I'm doing daily videos and basically on just whatever I want to do them on. Yesterday was a compilation of my own TikToks because I'm insufferable, and I think the day before that was like a let's play of a game I found called Jake's Love Story, which I'm excited to go back to playing. Yeah, today's gonna be something a bit more embarrassing. I say embarrassing, but only embarrassing like if you care. Whereas I feel very passionately about this. And that is that my game of the last decade was probably Skyrim. Skyrim was like so ridiculously massively popular, right? Like, I know that it became like the joke until then that was a joke of its own to just say that it had been released on everything but a toaster. But you don't do that unless you know it's going to sell. And it did sell, it did a whole lot. And with anything that gets that popular, you get a big crowd of people that are like, oh, it was so overrated. Oh, I didn't like it. Oh, it didn't deserve the hype. And I kind of think that Skyrim did deserve the hype. It's just been laughed at for so long and now replaced by so many newer and better games that we forget how good it was. But isn't that just always the way, right? Like anything super successful, you always get these people popping up out the ground like weeds being like, well, I think it's rubbish. Oh, didn't you know it was bad? No, I didn't. I had a good time with it. I like, actually, what's your, guys, tell me your game of last decade, right? So like say up until 2019, from 2010 to 2019, say, releases from that era, what are your major games from that era? Because I would like to know. Let me know below. And like, is Skyrim one of them? Why not? If not, did you just not play it? Or like, is there things about it that are wrong for you? Let me know, let me know. So let's knock through a couple of reasons that I think Skyrim was my game of the decade, right? When Skyrim came out, I was in, I don't know, I was at university and I had only just played Oblivion. Not a lot of it, but that already blew me away just by like the concept of the game. The fact that something was so big and had so much freedom in it was still a relatively new concept gameplay-wise and was very new to me. And this like aesthetic of this world, like it was my bag, right? This was my kind of thing. Loved fantasy, loved magic. And when Skyrim came out, I remember just thinking that the pitch of it being more like, you know, warriors and Vikings, basically, just I found a lot more agreeable than Oblivion. In a way I can't really put my finger on because I did like Oblivion, right? Like I did like it. But Skyrim, just the whole aesthetic of the game was really something else. And like the lore, it really pulled me in. And the fact that it goes so in depth as well and it's built into like the architecture of the different regions and the dungeons you might find underground with the Dwemer, like the depth to which the world building happens in that game. And if you've watched all of these videos by now, you know I'm a sucker for world building. It's just incredible. And at the time, I feel like may have been quite rare, right? But now, everyone's released a sandbox and it needs to have like incredibly in-depth, well-researched lore with little hints about it hidden all over the place so that it's like a choose-your-own-adventure level of involvement in the depth of it without having to make you know all of it. But like, Skyrim wanted me to learn all of it. I wanted to learn all of it. Next up, music, right? Like, the music in Skyrim is awesome. I know it's not always awesome, right? But like it's got that Minecraft kind of thing where the atmospheric music just really fits with the aesthetic and it just feels nice to be walking. There's always a good atmosphere. Like the kind of combat music is a little bit cringe at this point, okay? Like meme worthy maybe, but like the main theme song, is it called Dovahkiin or is it called The Dragonborn Comes? I can never remember, but like it's so good. I remember a couple of years back now, I went to a charity event for Bethesda in London and it was like a live performance of music from Bethesda games, and I was very disappointed. Like, honestly, the Dragonborn Comes Dovahkiin, whatever it's called, is a total anthem for me. And like, when I got there and they finally got around to playing it, which was near the very end, you couldn't even hear the vocals. Like, they had a male choir, but they were completely drowned out by like the higher instruments. I don't know, it just did not seem to be composed in the way that, is that what a composer does? Anyway, I don't mean compose as in like the composer, I just mean like it wasn't set up right for it to come across the way the recorded version of the sound does, maybe. I don't know, but it was disappointing, so it didn't have the punch. And also the choir, rather than like really giving it like you hear in Dovahkiin, like they were just kind of like, ha, ooh, yeah. And like, I was like, you didn't play it, did you? You didn't play it. You're not Dragon Ball. And I was just very disappointed. That event turned out to be mostly stuff from Fallout 76. I really think it was a promo event, and they had these two guys doing banter on stage that weren't very funny. I don't think they should have been hosting it. The freedom as well of the game for me was, like I said at the time, unprecedented almost, right? Just being able to pick a direction and go in it and actually happen across real things as if the world was real and was living its own little life, right? Like, I know that probably around that time we'd already had, like, I don't know, let's say Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, but people didn't live there. Like, it never felt like it was a real breathing world to me, not in the same way. Like, Skyrim having people with their little routines, living their little lives in their little houses was amazing. And there was never really, for me, in maps like San Andreas, a good reason to explore. You just want to get from A to B as quick as possible, right? Whereas in Skyrim, I would routinely choose to walk somewhere because of the things that you would happen across. I would, like, if I was fast traveling for a mission, I would maybe fast travel to somewhere that was like a couple of little stops further away, just so that I would happen across things, right? And I just loved that kind of freedom and discovery. And also it felt so packed, right? You rarely went very far in Skyrim without happening across something else. And I think that, like, it had that fantasy aesthetic while having a game that was, like, at its core really quite simple. Like, it wasn't like a kind of Final Fantasy style, like turn-based, loads of stats to min-max and mechanics and stuff like that. You really could just like swing a sword or shoot a bolt, but it still felt very fantasy, right? Like, I guess maybe accessible is the right word. Like, the cinematics of it and stuff as well, I remember being very new at the time. Like, in the opening sequence, when you're like in that cart and you're going down into Helgen, is it? And then, like, I'm forgetting names now because it's been so long, but the big bad dragon comes and lands down, and then, like, you're being led through frames of a cinematic while also running to make your escape. Like, that blew me away. Blew me away. When you run up that tower and it's framed at the right time, Alduin the dragon, when you're running up that tower and Alduin smashes through the wall just as you arrive there, I was just like, this is so cool. And then the hole that he just smashed in the wall, you jump out of it and down into the opposite building, which is burning, and then you see all these little scenes as you escape, like them fighting the dragon and them rescuing people and stuff. And I just thought, like, this is sick. This is so cool. It was not like anything I'd ever seen before. And there are, I think, other parts in the story as well that kind of do that, but nowhere near as much as that opening sequence. It was just really, really great. The dragons as well were just like, I think they were something that was really very new to me because, like, they're so big. That sounds really dumb, right? That sounds really dumb. But the dragons in Skyrim and the size of them when you're fighting them, I feel like that was new as well, to be fighting something that had such a size difference. And the fact that then you get a sense of scale when they're flying around in the sky, that you can hear their roar from like a mile away and you know a dragon's coming and you can see it soar over a nearby mountain. It's sick, and just talking about it now makes me want to go back and play it. In fact, I might even buy it on the Switch. It's been released on that now, right? Like, it gets released on everything. Good, I'm glad. Shouts as well, talking of dragons, sucking up their souls and using shouts. So cool. Like, I remember the very first time that I fully used a full strength, like, Fus Ro Dah, the unrelenting force. And it's when I was being, like, wailed on by some, like, maybe orc, I don't know, but some kind of bandit leader, right? In every bandit camp, you have the toughest one, right? I'm pretty sure it was the toughest one, and he was just like killing me. I was nearly dead. And then I was like desperately running away, thinking of I was out of potions, thinking of all the things that I could do in order to try and like spam to get him away from me. And I used that shout, and I used it at full strength, and I threw him off the top of the tower that we were on. And I was like, sick. So you can like actually use your brain a little bit, because these shouts do things that let you circumvent strength, right? Like, what was the other one? Ice Body, where you can just freeze someone solid. That's great too, because like just being able to freeze someone solid and then leave, right? Or just being able to like wail on them yourself a couple of times. They were just really cool. Or to like be invisible as well, to dash. I remember like, you can go, I forget what it is. It's Become Ethereal, where you're like invincible for a certain amount of time. I just used to use that to cheat fall damage, right? And I remember thinking of that myself and being so satisfied that I could just like jump off of the throat of the world or whatever other like super high place on the map, and then just use that shout and land safely because I was a ghost. I honestly just like, I'm sure that there are probably more material reasons, objective reasons rather than subjective reasons why Skyrim must rank among the top games of last decade, even if just not in sales numbers, right? But I honestly think that it is a standard I judge games by today. And I know that loads of people were like, oh, it's so buggy and stuff like that, but you know what? I don't remember it being insufferable when it first came out. I've read in a couple of places recently that like, oh, it was obviously like really shit when it first came out and then got improved by mods, but like, mods just made it even better. Do you know what I mean? It was a good game before people started modding it. Modding just added even more. Like, I'm a PS4 player, so I didn't even have mods for the most of the time that the game existed. And then when I finally could get them, it wasn't like the really good ones from PC, but they're just like a kind of extra flavour, right? To say that it was unplayable without mods is just ridiculous. And not true. It's really good. It's a good game. And it just gets so much stick these days as well for like, you know, because it was so successful, because it was so popular, everyone's like, oh, it's so overrated. It's like useless without mods. I'm here to tell you it's not overrated. And it was probably, to date, one of the games I've spent the most time in. Obviously, Pokemon is an amazing series and a really major thing for me. Same with Zelda, really major thing for me. But like, I guess in the last decade, Breath of the Wild was out, and that was really cool. But then, like, I'm sure that there are probably through lines you can draw between Skyrim and Breath of the Wild, right? Like, really changed the game. The influence. I wonder if that's going to make people angry that I'm comparing Breath of the Wild to Skyrim. It's become uncool to like Skyrim because it was so popular, but you know what? It deserved it, and for me it is easily one of my games of the decade. Last decade. One of my games of last decade. And again, like, let me know what your games are in terms of like your best games of last decade, right? Because you can tell already with the kind of tech that's coming out this coming decade, like 2020 to 2030, it's just going to be stupid for video games. It's going to be so good. But yeah, like, share and subscribe. Okay, bye.